basic structured query language, basic SQL, intermediate SQL, and advanced SQL. So in lab, right, so what we do is that initially we start working with DDL, DML, and DCL statements. Probably next week we'll be starting working with tables. We'll be connecting multiple tables and fetch data from multiple relations, right? And functions in SQL, working with triggers in SQL, and basically we interface SQL with some high-level languages. So as I said, I will have one exercise with Python and my SQL, right? So Python will be used to design a front end and middle tier for fetching or storing the records, and SQL will be used as a backend to store the data. We'll have some exercises with PHP and MySQL and so on, right? Let me start structured query language, right? So SQL is a standard language for accessing and manipulating the databases, right? So whenever you need to do whenever you need to store some data in a database, you need to access it. For efficient storage and retrieval, we need to go for a structured query language. So SQL stands for structured query language. So it lets you to access and manipulate the databases, right? So you have SQL from different vendors. So all the vendors, they have to follow the ANSI format, American National Standard Institute standard. They need to follow it, right? So what can SQL do? Right, so you all know, you would have done something with SQL maybe. So it helps you to insert records into a database, right? So it should be possible for you to update the records in a database, and it should be possible for you to delete the records from a database, right? So insertion, deletion, updation operation, and the retrieval of data from a database, they come under the category data manipulation language. Right, so in SQL we have three categories of languages: DDL, data definition language, which is used to define the schema of the database, which is used to create a new table in a database, which can be used to alter the table that is present in a database and drop a table, right? So SQL has data definition language for schema definition. Whenever you create a database, you need to define the schema using data definition language. So you'll be able to create a database, you can create a table, right? You can alter the table, add fields in a particular relation, or you can drop fields in a relation, right? And finally you can drop the entire relation, drop the entire schema definition by means of drop table command. And you have data manipulation language, where you'll be able to add records in a table, delete records in a table or a database based on some condition, update records in a table, and we have a lot of commands to retrieve the information that is present in a database, right? So SQL can create new databases, and it can create new tables in the databases. So we can also work with stored procedures in your databases, right? So we'll study about procedures, right? We can work with some procedures in databases. We can create views in your databases. So you all know views, like we can create some virtual tables whereby different user will be given a different perspective view of the same table in a different way, right? And it also can be used to set permissions on access permissions on tables, procedures, and views, right? So whenever we say DBMS, usually we call it as relational DBMS. So RDBMS, it stands for Relational Database Management System, right? So RDBMS is the basis for SQL and for all modern database systems such as Microsoft SQL Server, right? So from Microsoft we have SQL Server, and IBM we have DB2. From Oracle Corporation we have Oracle, right? So we have MySQL from we have Postgres SQL, and we also have Microsoft Access for storing information in a database. So the data in RDBMS is stored in a database object called tables, right? So generally we call a relation as a table, right? So we use tables to store the data and to represent the relationship between the data, right? So a table is a collection of related data entries and it must contain columns and rows, right? So generally the columns are referred to as attributes and the rows are referred to as records or tuples, right?